Hello.
Hello. How are you doing today, Nathaniel?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Fantastic. I got to thank you for this. The thing is that I have a friend that is over there as an American journalist, and he has connected me with so many Ukrainians. And for you to put this out there on MTV now is one of the most brilliant moves that I've experienced. We thank you for this.
Well, thank you for watching.
A show like this, you've got to tell the story of the realism. Is it like putting the face on the news headlines? Because the news headlines always shows, the destruction, but we don't get to see the people.
Yeah, I mean that's sort of one of the big focal points of the storytelling of the film. It's taking it out of the political, taking it out of the statistical analysis of the war, and telling the humanist side, focusing on the kids, on these teenagers, these really resilient, brilliant people who have been forced out of their homes by Russian violence and are asking what's next, and telling the internal story there. What is the emotional implication of this war? What's the impact from that human side?
Well, how about this as one of the top ones that really gets inside your heart? Who would have ever thought that teens were separated from their fathers? I mean, that right there in itself is like, oh my God, you have my attention.
Yeah, military law in Ukraine. I mean, this is one of the things that we kept coming back to and that we didn't expect, walking in. This is why we were really we had to be open to learning and to understanding our own blind spots. And so we walked into this film and learned really quickly that military law was keeping all of the adult men from the age of 16 upwards back in the country. So the story really quickly became about, not only the impact of the war on the mental health condition of these kids, but also what is it to have your family ripped apart and to have young mothers with their kids in a country where they don't know the language and they're forced to start over with their partners on military reserve in their homeland. And these are people who are professionals and they're living their lives, and suddenly they're asked to stay home, watch your family flee, and be ready to fight on the drop of a dime.
How do you think this is going to change, let's say, Generation Z as well as the new Alpha generation? Because, I mean, a war like this, and with you guys doing this on MTV, this right here says to the younger hearts that, oh my God, they don't have what we have. We're either going to be grateful or we're going to try to protect to get them, more involved in having what we've got.
Yeah. Right. I always bring it back to what is it going to do to this generation of kids?
Yes.
What are they? The teenage years, adolescence is already a complicated period of time. You're discovering who you are. What does a war do to your mental landscape and to the landscape of the country itself? If millions and millions of kids are uprooted and are forced to develop lives elsewhere. I mean, that's another story that isn't really being told much, is what does winning look like? What does your country look like? What does the identity of a country look like if the kids had to flee and are going to school in Poland and are developing their lives elsewhere, right? It's an interesting situation.
One of the things that my neighbor, being over there in Ukraine, he says that one of the top goals is to make sure that people still have the mindset of we are a strong community. Did you run into that mindset as well with the younger people?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It was one of the big points of hope and sort of inspiration for the crew, for everybody. And it's, one of the things that it's part of the backlash of the war is that, I think Russia, their objective was to quickly overtake this country. And what ended up happening was Ukrainians are only prouder to be Ukrainian. They're more defensive and more steadfast in their identities as Ukrainians. They see this as an assault on the cultural specificity of Ukraine as a place and as an identity and as a culture. And they are adamant, and they should be. And it was an exciting thing to encounter. All of the kids were proudly Ukrainian. They are Ukrainian. They were all Dasha, one of the subjects. She was in the midst of she did half of her interview in Ukrainian. Sasha did her interview in Ukrainian. They speak Ukrainian. Everybody's committed to maintaining that culture and digging their heels in as to who they are and their role as Ukrainians in the world.
Did Sasha or Dasha speak of the rebuilding? Because that is in my heart like you wouldn't believe. Who's going to go in there to rebuild, to put all of this back together? And we're going to need people like Sasha and Dasha to move forward with that, to lead people.
I think that generation is going to do wild and extraordinary things with Ukraine. I think that young Ukrainians are going to go back. Our film ends with each of the kids talking about their expectations. And as soon as this war is behind them and they've won, they're going back and they're rebuilding, and they're bringing their educations with them. It's going to be a really exciting period of time when Ukraine, its borders strong, have a generation returning. And it's going to be exciting. What
did you personally learn in the way that when you're that up close and personal, things that are coming through that camera lens, and number two, when you're putting your fingers on that keyboard of that computer, that emotion had to come out somehow, some way?
Yeah, it was complicated. I had an idea of what I was going to walk into, and I was also, keep in mind, protected by the fact that I don't speak Ukrainian, I don't speak Russian, I don't speak Polish, and this is kind of a shout out to the translators out there, because I had to operate through my translator and story producer. So there was sort of this filtering system that would happen, right? So I would ask a question, and we developed incredibly intimate relationships with all the kids. They were all super just excited and eager to talk, and we all became really good friends. But all of the communication, at least for me, filtered through my story producer. So she sort of received the raw, unvarnished realities, and then the language translation was sort of a cushion for me. So I was able to focus on the storytelling and the filmmaking without being completely punched in the gut by absolutely everything and debilitated. And she sort of took on the raw realities of it, which is something that I think people also really don't talk about, that war translation, language, these are all really big parts of the story and of the war.
If you knew how many times that phone app is put in front of me from Ukrainians that are sending money back home, I mean, it's just amazing. I've never seen a nation even stand united in other nations the way that they're sending money through Western Union to their families. I'm just blown away by this connection.
Yeah. Yeah, people are eager to support. It's a one-sided war. Russia came at them, and Ukrainians around the world are eager and ready to stand by. They're eager to send money to support. Our film. You can support them. You can support the mental health organizations that are supporting the kids through our film. We partnered with a company called an organization called Choose Love. You can find them at ukraine.mtv.com. To help support. But yeah, Ukrainians around the world, they're not standing by in silence. They're eager to donate and to help and to get to work.
Dude, I want to follow up on this, and I hope to God you're going to be doing that, because to me this is the reality of what it's all about when it comes to reality TV, is that this isn't staged. You're over there documenting history, and we want to see the growth of all people.
Yes, that's what it is.
Oh, my God, so brilliant. Please, Nathaniel, come back to this show anytime in the future. The door is always going to be open for you.
All righty. Thanks so much.
You be brilliant today, okay, sir?
All right.